If you haven't heard about Anchor, it's the easiest way to make a podcast. Let me explain. It's free. You can record and edit your podcast right from your phone or computer. Anchor will distribute your podcast for you, so it can be heard on Spotify, Apple Podcast, and more. You can make money right from your podcast with no minimum listeners. It's everything you need to make a podcast right in one place. Download the free Anchor app or go to anchor.fm to get started. Welcome to the Be the Adult podcast. Be the Adult is a non-profit organization that provides blueprints for calm and effective parenting so that children can grow into their best selves. Because ultimately, we aren't raising children. We are raising little people who will one day be adults.
Hello, Nancy.
Hey, Marisol. How are you on this beautiful Sunday morning?
I am fantastic. I have a whiteboard in my kitchen, right next to the kitchen table, and I just wrote a note to the kids that says, all you have to do is be the best version of you.
I love it.
Exclamation point. And I just thought that was perfect for what we're going to be talking today on the podcast about.
I love that. I absolutely love it. And I was going back through the Be the Adult quotes that I've written for Facebook posts and social media posts. And I found one that I had written about this topic that makes me smile. So I will read it after you share with the audience what we're going to be talking about, please.
We are going to talk about the topic, Accept Me for Who I Am. I'm going to read from our book from the perspective of the child, just to give our audience an idea of what subject we're going to delve into. Accept me for who I am. Please see me and honor me for who I am, not for who you want me to be. Please always treat me like I am good enough for you. Why? This shows me that I am a unique individual who deserves to be appreciated for who I am by you, myself, and others.
Gives me chills. For me, this is one of the most important things we can do, because if we don't accept our kids for who they are, we're creating shame. And shame is the not feeling good enough, which we want to avoid as much as we can. All of us as parents do our best, and we can't avoid this totally because none of us are perfect for sure. But if we're aware of it, we can work hard. And thank you everyone for being here today to pay attention to this and learn more about it. We have an amazing guest in just a minute, but I'll share what I wrote. If we don't accept our kids for who they are, we're telling them to tuck their truth away as shame. And that gets me right here in my throat. So, go ahead.
Yeah, I just want to say, shame, I like to write. I like to think of myself as a writer. And the way I describe shame is it's like a layer. It's like a layer of it's not honey, molasses. It's just thick. And it's such a hard thing to clean off of you when you have it. And, I think it's just something that many, it's sort of new into maybe not for you or a guest who are a therapist, but for people outside, it's sort of new into the lexicon with Brene Brown talking a lot about it, and, a lot of information out there, but it's not something that we grew up talking about. It's not like my parents ever sat me down and said, I don't want you to feel shame. I might actually argue my parents were very, very, use that as a parenting tool. So the parents out there, I would just say it is something that, you want to learn about the subject, deep dive into it, and try to avoid doing for your children, because it will save them a lot of money in future therapy bills.
Absolutely. It's a perfect time to introduce our guest. She can shed some more light onto the topic. So I want to introduce Shelley Chambers. She is a therapist in Wilmington, and she's been practicing for over 20 years. She says that she loves working with individuals, families, couples, helping them to feel understood. She also provides co-parenting sessions to separated and divorced couples who are having a difficult time communicating with each other in the best interest of their children, which that's one of the reasons Be the Adult started, right? We really wanted to take the best care of our kids as possible, of the future. She was born in Nova Scotia, which is interesting. I'd never known that about her. She moved to North Carolina in high school and went to college and graduate school in North Carolina. And she chose to make Wilmington her home. We appreciate that very much after graduate school. She's in private practice with 4 other clinicians. The name of their practice is called Potentials. Did I get all that right, Shelley?
Absolutely. Yes,
Welcome.
thank you. Thank you so much for having me, Nancy and Marisol. I'm just so impressed with the work that you have both done and the generosity of sharing freely your knowledge and just helping this community. It's a real pleasure to be here.
Love you, Shelley. I just want to say thank you. I just feel that one of the blessings I get for being a part of Be the Adult is I get to be surrounded by all these subject experts who can help, me and other parents be the adult. So thank you. Thank you for coming on.
Oh, thank you, Marisol.
Yeah. So let's jump right in. Why is it important, Shelley, to pay attention to accepting our kids for who they are? And and a piece of that would be understanding who they are, what their temperament is, kind of what they bring to the moment. Would you mind speaking about that for a bit?
Oh, I'd love to. I think it's just so important to understand, that children aren't just many adults and they're not just many cookie cutters of their parents. Every time a child comes into the world, they have their own unique temperament, personality, desires, interests. And I just really love, when I see parents that are just open and curious as to how their child evolves and don't have a prescribed formula for how this child needs to be. I think that's one of the messages I love that you two have with Be the Adult, is being open and accepting. I think that, being the adult is doing our own work and being aware of what our dreams and what our hopes are for ourselves and for our children, and that we don't just subconsciously put all of our stuff onto the kids. I grew up in Nova Scotia and rather, I guess, probably a pretty unique situation in that my father trained racehorses. And so that's the reason that we moved to the States when I was in high school. But I remember as a young child going to camp, and it was, of course, horse camp, and so for most kids, they would be like, yay, it's horse camp, blah, blah, blah. For me, I was like, oh my God, not another horse, And so at the end of the camp, the award that I got was the best faller offer, and so like just to kind of to be aware, like just because we may be a horse family or a tennis family or a banking family or whatever, it doesn't necessarily mean that our kids are going to be just as excited about it or have that same the same gift. I have 2 sisters and a brother. I have a sister that's an artist. I have a sister who's a horse trainer and teacher, and then I have a brother who's a banker. And so for my youngest sister, who is an amazing equestrian, was on the NC State equestrian team. For her, horse camp would be a dream, but for me, it's like, oh, don't make my feet have to leave the ground. I don't want to get up there. And so I just think awareness is just so big for parents to be able to, like you both have talked to so much about the mindfulness, about, taking a pause and just, with curiosity, what are some options? What really is this child interested in? and not just automatically like assuming that the kids are gonna, prefer to do things or be like the parents.
I would like to add on, because I think something I did, and I'll just speak for myself. When I have 3 kids, and when they were younger, there was like a checklist of activities that I sort of felt. Now, no one gave me this list. I don't know where I had this list from, but it was all these like activities that it was sort of like I was checking them off the list, and that would make me a good, in my head, in my mind, that would make me a good mom. If I signed them up for Girl Scouts, Boy Scouts, piano, blah, 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 dance, and it was and I think a lot of us walk into that. We don't, we don't have a be the adult or potentials to say, hey,
Right.
sit back, wait, see, explore, give them an opportunity to grow into their interests. But there's like this, I don't want to say pressure, but to me, it felt like a pressure. Like I had to, this was the approved list of activities.
Well, and I think there is so much pressure on parents. Parents don't want to fail their children. And, that awful, the reality that, comparison is the thief of joy, that takes a long time to get and to understand that just because everybody else may be going to piano, to tennis, to tutoring, it doesn't necessarily mean that if we don't do that we're not a good parent.
Yeah.
And I think especially like during like this pandemic, everybody's been off what we have thought was the best thing. There is just so much pressure to be the best parent and to not let our kids down.
Yeah, I actually felt a little bit during the lockdown. It was nice. It sort of shifted the perspective for me personally. I'm speaking for myself, where that busyness was gone, that after busyness, and it was lovely. It was a lovely. It made me reframe, like, really, what is important?
I bet.
I think another piece absolutely is, my experience has been a lot of parents' pressure, and I know going through this myself when my kids were younger, based on my fear, my anxiety that if I don't introduce my children to all of these activities, they won't be these well-rounded adults, whatever that means to parents, and they won't be able to be their best selves when they're older. So it was kind of a fear-based of like, how do I try to control that and make that happen, which is absolutely comes from a good place. And I think one of the impacts of that, not only on ourselves, like kind of running around stressed out, trying to get our kids to all these activities, there's the impact of the family dinners suffer, that the time that a child has to just be, to be bored, to say, okay, what can I do to entertain myself? How can I tap into my creativity? And just kind of have that space to be with myself. So, yeah. Go ahead, Shelley.
Oh, no, I think that's an excellent point.
Yeah. So what else do you see as the impact on kids when parents, and again, we just want to reiterate, every podcast, we're all doing our best. So yes. I don't want to communicate any shame to parents. So just know that we're all doing our best. Our hearts are pure, and we're just parenting the way we were parented, unless we, make a conscious effort to increase our awareness and change. So what do you see, Shelley, as some more impact or consequences of us not accepting our kids for who they are, or the opposite of the benefits of accepting our kids for who they are on children?
Well, I think that accepting kids who they are, then they have a feeling of worthiness. And when we don't accept them for who they are, then of course, like Marisol said, there's that great shame, and I think, just that attunement, that parents and kids have, to be able to be loved unconditionally is the key. And obviously your audience are already amazing humans and parents, to even be interested in such a podcast. And I think, temperament just has a great piece to play, and that, some of us, like me, I'm an introvert, whereas I have, a sibling who's an extrovert, and that we give the space, to follow the lead of the temperament of the child. And I was out at the beach yesterday having a small celebration for a birthday, and with the family I was with. They have two girls, just both amazing, human beings. Their family, their extended family, is in Indiana, and the oldest one, is the more extroverted, and she's like, "We have so many relatives," and then the second one is like, "We have so many relatives," You're just like, don't overwhelm me with all of this, and I think that, historically, I think that this generation is much better. But, when I was a kid, there definitely, was that kind of push to please the adults, like sit on somebody's lap or go give somebody a hug. And
isn't it crazy that I think of that now, and it's how uncomfortable that was and how often that was put up, like,
right,
to give a kiss,
right,
to a stranger.
No, I totally agree, Marisol.
Yeah. So, Shelley, how would you suggest that parents try to honor our children's individuality and their uniqueness? Do you have some tips for parents how to do?
Well, I think just having like an attitude of curiosity, and just being able to sit and be open, and to even talk to our kids about what do you like, when we go see people, do you need, it's okay to take a minute, just kind of preparing for new situations. And how do you feel about that? What do you think about that? What do you need?
And being present, right? Being present to have it, in the moment. If you're present, you're paying attention to how your kids are communicating, how they're
truly.
I have a question for you, Shelley. You sort of touched on it earlier, but can you discuss how it's important for us as adults to work on accepting ourselves?
Mm-hmm.
Because we talk a lot on Be the Adult about how we model for our children. So I know I've had to do a lot of work for myself on accepting things for myself. But that might not be something that we think that we need to do.
Well, I think that's key. And I think that even, we don't just turn 21 and then it's done, then we're grown. I think having, like, embracing, like, that we're all works in progress, and that, through children and through all of our relationships, that's opportunities for more growth, to become even more aware of our blinders or our biases or our dreams and our preferences, our expectations, and, to be open to continuing to grow. We may have a child, like, for me, I might think, because, my parents worked all the time, I'm just going to travel with my children and we're going to go here and here and here. And that might be my own dream, based on maybe what I didn't get as a kid, thinking, well, if I do the opposite, that's going to be better. And that's going to be what my kid needs. And so I think just being open to, like, what's going on with me that I think that this is going to be better for my kids. And it's not a judgment. It's just, we're always hopefully growing and being curious about also our own preferences, our own dreams, grief and loss too. I think that a lot, every human being, has so many options for preferences, I think whether, politically, friend wise, interests, even, working a lot with teenagers now and tweens, there's a lot more openness and earlier for, not being, having preferences of, being straight. There's more openness and more conversation early about being bi or pan or trans. And those weren't terms that I heard when I was 12,
Or for me, 20 or 30.
Right. Yeah.
I just
And
had a conversation with my 18-year-old daughter. She visited a friend and she was using the they them pronoun for her friend, and I was trying to engage in the conversation, and I kept tripping myself up on the pronouns.
Right. Yeah.
She got a little frustrated with me, and I said, you have to understand, this is new for me. My intention is I'm trying to learn it, but it's
absolutely.
So times are definitely changing quickly, aren't they?
Yeah. And I think just like you explained it so perfectly, that you communicated with your daughter, like, this is new for me. I'm trying my best. I really want to understand, but you know what? I'm going to mess up, and I want some grace. And I'm not saying this to judge. This is just new. And I think, like, especially parents, even, very, very open-minded parents, when it comes to their own children, maybe identifying as bi or trans or pan, just being open to their own sense of loss or grief, like that, maybe there was a dream that their child would marry and have kids and they'd be a grandparent, and it's not that that's wrong, it's just be open to whatever is happening in your body and your mind, and be able to work on it, and to be forgiving of yourself too. That we're all works in progress. We aren't born knowing everything. That wouldn't be a human being if we were. We're here to grow, and to be able to communicate and to ask for information to grow. Yeah. And I think the communication, if it's that's just a sign of a healthy home.
Yeah, I love that you're focused on that. A lot of parents will say, well, how do I know? Right. And I say, ask your child, say, hey, just be authentic and say, hey, I love to play tennis, or I love to watch you play soccer, but what's it like for you? What's your experience? How do you feel when you're on that soccer field? How do you feel when you're riding your bike? How do you feel? Like, what feeds you? And so just the process I found of, even with my own kids, of, like you had said, Shelley, being curious, communicates to them that I want to accept them for who they are, and that they can be vulnerable with me to share who they are, to allow me to see them for their likes or dislikes. And they just have to feel safe that when they share that with me, I'm going to receive it open-heartedly.
Absolutely.
And value in the process of just even asking and being curious, like you mentioned. I love that.
Well, thanks.
Yeah.
I have a follow-up to the question about the parents accepting themselves. Like, what are some questions we would, because that might be a new concept to a lot of people. They might tune in and be like, okay, yeah, I'm ready to accept my kids, but they won't have the thought that maybe they need to do some accepting of themselves.
Right.
But for me, that was a huge blind spot. I was like, I thought I accept myself, I love myself, and then like, oh, here's a big bag of issues I needed to
All right. And if that's one thing we can count on, is that life is going to throw us nice, growth opportunities when we really don't want them.
We're not looking. Yes.
Yeah.
Every day.
Yeah.
So what are some questions that a person listening is like, wait, how do I know if I'm accepting myself? What are some like things that they can, journal or work through for themselves?
Well, I think just listening, noticing like when we're hard on ourselves, like I think, I have red hair. Okay. So if I had a child with red hair, I would want to make sure I wasn't like, oh, if I only was a blonde, or, because we kind of, we that kind of, those messages we pass down. And so just being able to notice like, wow, I am kind of being hard on myself. And then there's also ears that are around here that are like, wow, maybe they're judging themselves too.
I hear it a lot with women, how they speak about themselves. I mean,
oh yes. Mm-hmm.
My friends, I'm constantly in the last few years, I'm constantly like, no, you can't say that about yourself. Like they'll say, like, I wouldn't speak of you this way. How are you going to speak of yourself this way? Like I'm fat, or I'm, this, or I'm that, and it's like almost a pandemic, I feel, of women just beating themselves up from the moment they wake up to the moment they go to bed.
Right.
And I'm not trying to be gender specific. I don't know what it's like to be a man. Maybe men do that too. But for women, I do feel like that inner dialogue is super tough on themselves. Like
I agree.
Yeah, well, we get that from our parents, right? Who got it from their parents, who got it from their parents, right? And so for me, it's when I have the awareness that I've taken out my bat and beaten myself up, or I'm about to, it's that awareness part. I'm like, all right, Nancy, you have a choice here. If you beat yourself up, or that you just did, how is that for you? Does that feel good? No. Well, if it doesn't feel good, what's that about? And then I try to reframe, if I can, kind of that thought that I'm having. And then I'm aware the ones that it's appropriate to share with my children. We have to make sure what we're saying is age and developmentally appropriate always. But it's like, would it benefit my child for them to be aware of my thought process and how I caught myself being not so nice to myself, and then what I did about it, so I can teach them how to do the same thing.
Right. And I think as a therapist and kind of knowing that cognitive triangle, that, what we say to ourselves impacts how we feel about ourselves. And that the only thing where we have control is what we say to ourselves. And I think it's nice, like, that we do spread that to our friends. And, Marisol, you saying that you notice your friends when they're hard on themselves, and try to offer your perspective of how you see them. Because sometimes we don't know that we have choices in how we review ourselves. And just to offer like, well, I see you this way. And it may be the first time that person actually heard anybody say that.
And also, it's easier for me to spot it in other people than it is for myself.
Absolutely.
My inner dialogue is, I know, or I'm trying not to curse. She's not a very nice boy. And it is every single morning battle to wrangle in that voice for me, for me personally. So, accepting oneself, I think part of that dialogue, part of that conversation is learning what you're saying to yourself subconsciously, because it plays a role. It just, it plays a role in what you're doing and how you're showing up.
Yeah. Language is so important, how we word things and how we feel about ourselves. And, just small things like if you're late, like, I'm so sorry to keep you waiting. I'm horrible, blah, blah, blah. To be like, thank you for your kindness and your patience. And it just totally changes how we feel. And whether we can handle the day or not. And I think, like, just as we're talking, it's just becoming clear, like, to be able to talk and to share, like, our truths, and not to feel like we can't do that. Like, what will you think about me if I tell you this? Like, I just think, like, the comfort in having somebody to talk to and be like, wow, I get up every morning and this is what I do. And, and for someone to say, well, yeah, well, it's hard. I do that too. And I think that so many of us, like, just feel like maybe inadequate, maybe we're not good enough, and then we don't share, and then we don't find out that everyone else is struggling too.
Mm-hmm.
And so to have the courage to, like, talk to a friend and trust that what you say is safe and that could actually help somebody else.
I love that.
I think so many people out there, everyone could use just positive words and affirmations to help them out. I don't know anyone who has it all together.
No, we're not supposed to.
Yeah, and that's the beauty, because if we believe we have it all together, then for me, it would mean I would stop growing, which
right.
I hope I always grow. I'm going to pick up on that word you said of affirmations, Marisol, because we need to retrain our brain, right? So if that's the beautiful thing about our brains, is that we can retrain them if we have the awareness and then put the effort in the practice, just like learning a new language, right? So in the morning, when we look in the mirror and some of those negative thoughts start, we can say, okay, I'm going to list 3 or 4 positive statements about myself. And I'm going to say them out loud. It's a little vulnerable to look in the mirror and say them out loud, but then we can get used to that. It becomes a habit. And then the hope is eventually our brain will more naturally go to the positive, down that positive pathway. And then teaching that to our children too. So while they can rely on us to help them feel better about themselves, they can learn to, feel empowered to help themselves feel even better about themselves, which to me would be a cool thing to pass.
Can I just add that? So I do that in the mornings. I'll show you Nancy and Shelley on the Zoom. I have on my mirror my November mantra. So every month I come up with new that I'll repeat.
Oh, that's so cool.
To myself. So my first one, I want to say 2 things before I read them. First is I understand that vulnerability part, because, like, if someone was coming into my house or cleaning, or a friend was in the beginning years ago, I would hide those. I would put it in the closet because I didn't want people to, like, make fun of me.
Right.
Now I don't care. But so these are my mantras. So for November, I am 100% worthy, whole, and complete. I am open to receiving my highest good. Expect a positive outcome. Be hopeful and encouraging.
Oh, that's so beautiful.
I've been repeating it myself, and I do it every morning. I have an accountability partner who actually is a man, and when I tell him that I'm beating myself up in the head because I haven't, gotten out of bed to start my morning routine, does not understand that. But I get out and I do a couple stretches and I repeat that to myself. And it sounds, I'm going to say, it sounds woo woo and silly, and it changed my life because the voice in my head is very tough. Says really, literally the first thought is, what is wrong with you? That's what I wake up to. Every morning I wake up to the idea of what is wrong with you. Something that came from my childhood, addressed it, therapy.
Yeah.
We're good.
But we all have schemas, and that you're just really being deliberate about, changing, that message, and there's so much research, the power of that, that we can, change those neural pathways. It's a lot of work, but it's so important. And I think that's awesome that you value yourself and love yourself enough to put in the effort.
Yeah, and my kids see it. And I will be honest, my kids have made fun of it in the past. It's not,
Yeah, sure.
like, oh, yeah. But I've seen some in the rooms, some notes that they've made for themselves, but it's something I need. It's a tool I use in my life. And I've come to love it. It's on all my mirrors and on my doors. I have like things to say to myself, like, don't talk bad about myself. Don't, self-love. Like, I just have to be my own best friend.
Yes.
I love that. Absolutely love it. So I guess to kind of tie this all together, it sounds like we're all saying that some similar things, is that we do our best as parents to create this wholehearted acceptance of our children's uniqueness, of what they bring into the world, right? That sounds great, right? But hard to do. And that we show our children our struggle to do that. But in showing them our struggle, there's so much value in that, because they're like, wow, I'm good enough for mom to really want to know me.
Right.
And then we pay attention, or along the way, we pay attention to how we get in our own way and how we get in their way, right? Of, wow, well, this is where I get stuck within me, and I'm aware of that. It doesn't feel good. I'm going to try to change it. And in doing so, we hopefully can teach our children to do the same. So the things that we're inadvertently unaware that we're passing on that's not so beautiful, that they can say, oh, well, yeah, I got that from my mom or dad or both or whomever, or society, but I can work to change it, which is, I think, a beautiful skill to have. Is there anything that you wanted to share, Shelley, that we haven't talked about that you'd like to offer?
Oh, I just think the forgiveness part too, that we're all human. We're all gonna look, have moments where we're gonna say, oh, I wish I had handled that differently. I wish I had worded it differently. And that's okay. And that we can go and we can be honest and vulnerable and just say, you know what? My tank was empty. I really wish I had said that differently or behaved differently. This is my intent moving forward. And just having, that truth, that excellent, communication that both of you talk about, being real and not needing our kids or, to see us as perfect, because then we're a little unreachable.
I love that. Thank you for bringing up forgiveness. That's such an important part. And then to me, what you described is exactly what we'd want our children to do when they screw up, right?
Right.
Something not so nice, or do something that they wish they hadn't. We're teaching them how to move forward from that.
Right. No, but I admire both of you so much for all the work that you do and the spirit of your book and all of the efforts that you do with the nonprofit, with the face masks. And I think that, you're an example to all of us, and just so grateful you're here.
Well, thank you so much. Thank you for
welcome.
Thank you so much. I feel this huge warmth in my heart. So I'm so appreciating our time together. And Marisol, again, I love every time I'm going to say it, just the perspective you bring to the podcast is so valuable. So thank you always.
I get to hang out with therapists, which is
It's nice hanging out with therapists and yogis and human beings. And
Shelley, you're so well respected in the community, Shelley, and I'm just so glad we have this time together.
Thank you. That means a lot.
Yeah, I really hear wonderful things about your work and what you're doing for our community and helping children.
Thank you so much.
So thank you. Yeah.
Thank you so much, Shelley, Nancy, and thank you to our listeners for joining us on another episode of Be the Adult. As mentioned, we are a nonprofit, so we would love your support. Please make sure to sign up for our newsletter. We have a merchandise store that will be online for the holidays, so you can support us by purchasing some merchandise, as well as donations. So please go to our website at www.betheadult.org and learn more information. Thank you, share, like, and subscribe.